Yeah, it is 10:30 at night on a Saturday, and we're gonna film my March wrap-up because we bloody well can. I've read 7 books this month, which it did not feel like that many. I think I realised that's only because I read 2 books on my physical TBR, both of which I bought very recently. So there's that. So let's talk about those first. So I've no idea what order I read these books in. I don't really care to check, but I read them. So one of the books I reread Bunny by Mona Awad, and I annotated it this time, and I felt like quite the rebel because not only did I annotate, I wrote in the margins and underlined, and some of it probably bled through the pages, but I don't care. And this was for Katie's Patreon. I was really interested to hear what Katie had to say about this because this is one of her favourite books and I wanted to hear her take on it. And while I get it, I appreciate it a bit more than I did, but this book is still not generally my vibe. But I appreciate the satire this is of mean girls, as well as artists being very kind of hoity-toity, being very arrogant and saying a lot without actually saying a lot. Just the art of bullshitting is a big part of this book. And I had all these theories about what stuff signified. And I don't even know if I was right. But there was some fun things that I didn't even catch on reread that Katie pointed out that I was like, we're onto something here. If you like kind of weird, trippy books, I'd give this a go. If that's not your vibe, I really don't think you'd like it. But yeah. Bunny, I think I gave this a 4-star in the end. The next physical book I read was The Maid by Nita Prose. This was also for Katie's book club, and I freaking loved this. So I'd kind of seen this and heard of this, and I was like, yeah, okay, it's about a maid. She finds a dead body, which is what it's about. But it's just kind of in the same vein as Finlay Donovan is Killing It. So it's slightly less silly, and it has a good twist, and it made me cry, and I ended up caring about this character more than I thought I would. I just wanted to protect her, and I hated everyone that was unkind to her, and just hearing about this girl Molly and her grandmother, and that ending changes things. She's not all she appears to be. I'll just say that. 4-star. Very good. I finished listening to an audiobook this month, which was Scarred by Sarah Edmondson, I want to say. Let me check. Yeah. Nailed it. I gave this 3 stars. So this is, if you don't know, please watch the documentaries because they're amazing. It is about this cult called Nexium, which was going on for 20 years, I want to say, and only kind of disbanded 5 years ago or something. And so this is about Sarah, who was kind of one of the team leaders in this cult, and she was the main whistleblower that helped take them down. And the whole vibe of this cult is that it started off as a self-help group to help you get better in your career and overcome your fears, which sounds great. But obviously it was more nefarious, and it was teaching people to override their instincts, gut feelings. And they definitely manipulated that to put people on a path to getting branded. Yes, that is the main fucked up thing. The buzzword you'll hear is about branding. Not just not a stamp. This was a branding pen, and there was sex trafficking, and there was blackmail, and it's a whole thing. So yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with this cult in the way that I find it really fascinating the steps along the way, and that a lot of cults tend to be about a profit, a religious belief, and this one is not that. And early stages, I was like, yeah, this sounds great. And I'm like, that's how they get you. They love bombing. They start off really nice, and then they twist you until you don't even know what you've gotten yourself into. So I've already watched 2 documentaries. The Vow, I'd recommend, is the best. And the other one, Seduced, is still good, but The Vow, must watch. And so having already watched both, this wasn't groundbreaking for me, but it was nice to have some more personal anecdotes and accounts that weren't included in either of those. But Sarah is a big part of The Vow, and she's interviewed a lot, and she's talked to she's talked about this so much. So she is amazing. And yeah, if you like cults, I'd give it a go. But honestly, I just recommend the documentaries more than anything. From the library, I don't have it anymore, I read Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is an adult fantasy. I don't know when it's set, but I believe it's based on like Native American culture and like mythology. So we follow a few different characters. The main guy, can't remember his name now, but he is kind of like the prophet, and he's just kind of on this mission, and there's people that help him along the way. There's like some tribal politics, and it was just really good. I really liked this. I did feel like the end was a bit rushed, but that's what sequels are for. And because it was kind of like, oh, we're leading up to something and we don't actually get to see the full of it. So I was like, okay, I understand that's what book 2 is for. Also, it's obviously a bit of a different kettle of fish here in Australia, but some of it really hit home about having that rift between the colonisers and the natives, because that is a big thing still in Australia. And while I was always like, yeah, that sucks, but I didn't really understand how that was my fault, because it wasn't me, you know? And so there was a quote in there where a character was like, well, why are they mad? It wasn't me. It was like another generation. And it's like, yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that you benefit from the genocide and the wiping out of their culture, because you wouldn't be in this place of privilege and like security if that hadn't happened. And I was like, it was just like a bit of an epiphany moment. Keen for the sequel. 4 stars. Another book I finished on my e-reader was Jade War by Fonda Lee, and I nearly DNF'd this because it is so long and dense. And anytime I was like, oh, maybe I give up, something interesting would happen. So I've got a love-hate relationship with this series. I do not like the pacing and the tone, because even though we have moments where we're like, oh, I am invested with the characters, most of the time I'm just bored and there's just really drawn out politics and just characters, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So kudos to anyone that like could keep up with everything, but I just couldn't. And while I appreciate things with a broad scope, that's not always a positive for me. So I enjoyed this book-ish, but I need to know how it ends, especially because people say Jade Legacy is like soul-crushing. And at this point, I'm just kind of like, you know what? A lot of these characters are messed up, and if they die, that's okay with me. I gave it 3 stars. Can't remember if I said that. And then 2 more things I read. I also read Learn My Lesson on my e-reader by Katie Roberts. And so this is like an erotica retelling of Hercules. It does not have any fantasy in it, so I was like a little bit disappointed by that. But for just like a fun, trashy read, I had a really good time with this. I also read this alongside Bethany, but she read The Sea Witch, whatever the Ariel one in this series is. And the thing is, like, this is a series, but they're all companions and you can read them in any order. So we done did. And so yeah, main complaints for this, like, overall had fun time. You know, I wasn't expecting a lot. It's an erotica. There was like a conflict that just felt like shoehorned in the end that was wrapped up very quickly, and I was like, ah, the end, cool. And with the smutty content, I think it started really strong and then kind of like fizzled. Like, I've read steamier books that aren't classed as erotica. So 4-star, because like I had fun, minor qualms, but I tried to rate things like based on that genre. Like, I can't compare this to The Maid because they're not even in the same realm. I finally got around to reading Fence Volume 2 from the library. So I read this at work. I was feeling very tired, so this put a smile on my face. So I gave this 4 stars. My only problem is, like, these are very short, so it's like you don't really get a complete, like, chapter chunk in there. Like, it's just kind of one prolonged chapter. So, like, I'm glad that there are multiple editions out because it's like, it's not satisfying at the end. Like, you need more, which is a ploy. It is a tactic, I understand, but I'm like, Is this just going to be about this one competition? Because we're going to need a bit more. That's it, folks. Those are the 7 books I read in March. I was hoping to read more, but ain't that always the case? So at the moment, I am still reading Elantris. I was hoping to finish this in March for the Citadel Book Club, but since the live show hasn't happened yet, there might be time. I'm like not even halfway yet, but I have read this before, but I do like it. I want to read it again. It's just that Brandon Sanderson takes me a long time to read because the text is freaking tiny. And while it is enjoyable, it's not like really fast paced, but good nonetheless. Also, I disagree with people saying this is not a good book. That it's like, oh, it's his first book, it's weak. No. There's some good characters. This is well crafted. It's cool worlds. Deal with it. Ambitious me. I started this on the last day of March, hoping I could finish it, but I just didn't have time in that day. And that's reminders of him. And I started this at work, and I read nearly 100 pages of it at work. So I'm still where I was. I'm on page 94. And Colleen, she's just kicking goals. She's just kicking goals. It's angst. It is angsty, and I'm here for it. I'm so excited. And this is either going to end in beautiful reunion or tragic heartbreak. So stay tuned and we'll see. And then also on my e-reader, I'm reading Jade Legacy, but only like 2 chapters. Well, I will talk to you next time, and I hope you enjoy whatever you're reading at the moment. Good night. Bye.